Welcome to this very special edition of the India Development Debate. I am Tamanna Inamdar. The Kulbhushan Jadhav case has been an emotional touch point for India over the last few years, and today the International Court of Justice at The Hague has handed India a massive diplomatic victory. The ICJ, or the International Court of Justice, has given India consular access to Kulbhushan Jadhav and stayed his execution. The court has now directed Pakistan to review its military court's order that sentenced Jadhav to death. Let's tell you a bit about the case before we move ahead. Kulbhushan Jadhav is a retired Navy officer who's been in Pakistani custody for at least 3 years now. Pakistan claims he's an Indian spy who had crossed over and was undertaking espionage activities. They put him through a legal process in a military court that has been questioned all over the world. India moved the International Court of Justice on the 8th of May 2017 to stop this kangaroo court's order that said Jadhav should be executed. 2 years later, the court has ruled, and this ruling will have far-reaching ramifications on the diplomatic relations between India and Pakistan, as well as India's standing on the world stage. On the show this evening to discuss the impact of this order, I'm joined now by Meera Shankar, former Indian ambassador to the United States, Tilak Devashir, the former Special Secretary, Government of India, and Sushant Sareen, Strategic Affairs expert, and of course Senior Fellow at ORF. Welcome to all of you and thank you for joining us. Let me go to Sushant. Sushant, this is a case that I know you have followed very closely, and just listening to, of course, the Chief Justice of that court, the President, Justice Yusuf's reading out of the order. The main contentions that Pakistan put forth in terms of legal arguments were rejected. We will now get consular access. We need to understand what this means for the dynamics between the two countries and also India's standing on the world stage.
Look, I don't know about India standing in the world stage, but I think as far as this particular case goes, it's I keep saying this, it's a slam dunk in India's favor. Virtually every single prayer which Mr. Harish Salve had put forward has been accepted, and virtually every single contention which the Pakistanis had made before the court has been demolished, brick by brick by the judgment. If you read the detailed judgment or you hear it, it's very clear. So that is one. But in substantive terms, what it means is that the court has stayed any kind of carrying out of the execution of Mr. Jadhav. They have asked the Pakistani government to review and reconsider the sentencing, which effectively means that they have questioned the credibility of the legal processes under which Mr. Jadhav was sentenced. For the Pakistanis to now go back and say that, look, okay, fine, we have reviewed and reconsidered it and we stick to the old thing, I don't think that is going to be possible. They will have to probably retry Mr. Jadhav, and in an open court. It's another matter that even a civilian court or an anti-terrorist court in Pakistan is a kangaroo court. We've seen what happened in Nawaz Sharif's case, that entire legal scandal or judicial scandal which is unfolding before our eyes, where judges are intimidated, they are blackmailed, and judgments which the deep state want are extracted out of them. So, but even so, if it goes to an open court, then given the fact that the ICJ has accepted India's request for consular access and given complete and unfettered consular access to the Indian side, which means that we can mount a legal defense for Mr. Jadhav, we can get to know what exactly happened, and we don't have to fall for the kind of nonsense which the Pakistanis have been feeding the rest of the world. More importantly, if this matter goes into open court, then a lot of the kind of stuff which the Pakistanis trying to peddle to pin on Mr. Jadhav will start getting exposed layer by layer.
1 minute.
For example, even when the initial reports came out, it was said that
Yeah.
No, let me just finish this.
Yeah.
So okay, I don't want to get into details, but a lot of that stuff which they said will start getting exposed, which will actually tell upon the Pakistani judicial system. But ultimately, and I think this is important. This matter will be resolved not through legal channels, not through public diplomacy. It will be resolved on the back channel.
Yeah.
It will be resolved by deal making between Mr. Deveshwar's organization and their counterparts in Pakistan, or at the governmental level. And finally, there will be some kind of political gestures will be made. All sorts of other things will happen before Mr. Jadhav finally comes back home.
Yeah.
So yes, a long way to still go forward. But I think a resounding victory for India today.
Absolutely, you've summed it up well, and especially the point that, you know, between what is happening today and between Kulbhushan Jadhav actually coming home, it may take some time. But what is the messaging? Meera Shankar, my question to you essentially is what this means for India-Pakistan relations as well, because the prestige of this verdict going in India's favour at the International Court of Justice, the kind of embarrassment Pakistan's legal framework now has had to face. Do you think these will have a deeper impact on the relationship and at a diplomatic level?
I think we have to wait and see how things go, because the verdict that India should be allowed unfettered consular access to Mr. Jadhav, and I think that itself will enable us to get to know more about Mr. Jadhav's point of view on the case. Secondly, if there is an open trial in a civilian court, then remedies for legal defense will also be available. But having said that, the Pakistan court system has been known to also accept nudges from the military on many occasions, as we've seen, you know, when they have, through the doctrine of necessity, regularized martial law imposed by different rulers in Pakistan, or the recent case about Nawaz Sharif's trial, where one judge declared that he had been put under pressure, and so on. So I'm not sure that trial in an open court will ensure a fair trial to Mr. Jadhav. It can also be used to whip up political emotions on the other side. So I think that back channel contacts and diplomacy will be very important in seeking a resolution. Now, the important thing is that Mr. Imran Khan has also been trying to send signals that he is responsible and you know, sagacious leader. For instance, after the Pulwama strike and the Balakot strike, that he released Wing Commander Abhinandan, and more recently we've seen the reopening of the airspace and the arrest of Pakistani airspace for Indian planes, and the arrest of Hafiz Saeed. Now, whether these are all smoke and mirrors, especially the arrest, whether these are smoke and mirrors as we've seen in the past, or it means that there is a conscious effort to change, I think the jury is still out. It's early days. We have to wait and see what the pattern of Pakistani behavior will be following this.
I think we should,
I think
yes,
you know, if
yes,
I think we should at least see what the possibilities are through back channel diplomatic contacts.
Absolutely, that's a point Sushant made earlier as well. I just want to come to one point. The final conclusion of the judgment is in 8 points. Out of these 8 points, 7 of the 8 have been decided by 15:1. Only one of them is unanimous, and one of them, which is the important one, because this is what is open to interpretation now from the other side, is where the court finds that the appropriate reparation in this case consists of in the obligation of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan to provide, by the means of its own choosing, effective review and reconsideration of the conviction and sentence of Mr. Kulbhushan Jadhav, so as to ensure that the full weight is given to the effect of the violation of the rights set forth in. Mr. Tilak, let me come to you with this particular question. Essentially, ICJ has put the ball back in the court of Pakistan. What India would have wanted, and what the best case scenario would be, that they overturn the ruling of this military court and ensure safe passage of Kulbhushan Jadhav back to India. But they're saying, okay, you look at it, review it and figure it out. The point made earlier by the other panelists, can we trust Pakistan to do that in a fair and transparent manner?
You see, I don't think so. The ICJ had any other option.
Yeah.
It's not a court of appeal. It didn't go into the merits of the case.
Yeah.
So, all it went into was whether the legality of India's argument that Pakistan has violated the Vienna Convention on Consular Relations, and it found that Pakistan had violated. Everything else follows from that. Now, the legality of the case itself, the merits and the demerits and the legal arguments, I don't think so. The ICJ really went into that. It wasn't argued, certainly. You know, and I think for India, one of the really crucial points to be able to press now, the whole case rests on his being arrested in Balochistan and then his further confessions, forced confessions, to prove that he was actually picked up from Iran, kidnapped from Iran, sold to Pakistan. And I think there is Pakistani media itself. There have been reports earlier, and which we need to sort of get together, to say that he was kidnapped from Iran, and they have been identified the commander of the Jaish-e-Adal, person by the name of Umar Baloch Irani, who had actually kidnapped him and sold him to the ISI. So that, I think, will really determine the further process of the case. I don't think so the ICJ could have annulled the judgment and set him really free, because, as I mentioned, it is not really a court of appeal or a court of looking at the merits of the particular case. Now, this is what Pakistani people, if you look at Twitter, are really going to town with. That, it didn't annul it wasn't meant to. The fact of the matter is that Pakistan said that ICJ has no jurisdiction. ICJ upturned that. It said that India's case is not admissible. It threw it out. That India's case is certainly admissible, and that it was in violation of the Vienna Convention. These are three major victories as far as India is concerned, and the continuing stay on the death penalty. So at least for the moment, Mr. Jadhav is safe, and that should be a big sigh of relief for all of us who are concerned about his welfare.
Absolutely. But let me come to the basic point you raised as well, Mr. Tilak, and I'm coming to Sushant with that question, is about the two different versions. Now, all through this process over the last 3 years or so, there have been two different versions. Pakistan has been keen to push their narrative, saying that Mr. Jadhav is a spy and he was coming in for espionage, etc., because they want to echo a lot of conspiracy theories they've been floating over the last many decades. India, of course, has refuted that on various forums and in this court as well. What happens to that story? Does this go back and play out in a Pakistani civilian court or another Pakistani criminal court next?
No, I think the civilian in the whatever other court there is, I think that is a sideshow. The point is that the Pakistanis have, in a sense, milked Mr. Jadhav for whatever it is worth over the last 3 years or so. They've virtually gone to town over this. They've tried to, drop his name at every instance, and that's what they've been doing. So I don't think there's any more traction left in Mr. Jadhav. In the sense that what you wanted to do, you've already done, and then there are these kind of deals made on the back channel. There's the famous Gary Powers case between the US and the Americans. So those kind of things keep happening between countries. Now, what will be at what point will a deal be struck? What will be the the contours of that deal? It's difficult for me to speculate on that, but I think that's the trajectory. On the other hand, politically, it becomes a bit of a hot potato, because here was this Prime Minister of Pakistan, although he is famous for U-turns and he thinks making U-turns is the hallmark of a visionary leader. But here is this man who, while in opposition, used to take pot shots at the then Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif on the Jadhav case. For him to now be seen to be doing a deal, on the back channel to release Mr. Jadhav is not going to be that easy, because now the political opposition is going to give him a treatment, a taste of his own medicine. That is one part of the problem. The second part of the problem is going to be the legal system in Pakistan, and as my colleagues have said, that that's already its credibility is under grave doubt. Even so, when this goes into an open court and matters are argued in an open court and there's cross-examination of witnesses and documents have to be presented, that is when the whole thing starts unraveling. So, whatever evidence is, you just simply can't convict a guy on a forced confession in a military camp under torture, under duress, and say that, okay, fine, he's admitted to everything. That's not going to wash down anybody's throat. And finally, I think it is extremely important for everybody to understand, even if this case had not gone our way, it is my belief that nothing would have happened to Mr. Jadhav, simply because that the Pakistanis cannot afford to execute a man like him and then hope that there will be no repercussions on India-Pakistan relations. So clearly they are going to be playing the game of brinkmanship. They will try and
I don't know.
But they're not going to go over that.
Okay, let me get more views on that, because the fact is that India moved the ICJ on the 8th of May for this very reason, because we wanted to stop any chance of execution of Kulbhushan Jadhav. That was our trigger. We managed to attain that. We've managed to keep that status quo for the last 2.5 years, and from now here on. Meera Shankar, where do you come in on that point? And also on the point of these back channel talks, if Pakistan has gone to town saying that this man is a spy, what is the spin with which they can now release him?
Well, there are deals which are struck, on these issues. So I think it's not really for me to speculate on what kind of possible deals, but that would be really the way forward. Yes, I think it's good that the death penalty has been stayed, because, it's possible if the death penalty had been executed, then we would have all been talking about abstractions. So I think it's good that there's a stay on the death penalty and that continues. The legal system in Pakistan, I think, is really weak. To pin our hopes on that, I think, might be difficult. I'm not so sanguine about the opposition in Pakistan right now, because most opposition leaders are in jail, and their ability to really mount a major kind of movement, should any deal be struck, might be less robust than it would have been had they been out. Nawaz Sharif, his brother, then Zardari.
Yeah.
I mean, all these people are in jail. And quite often in the past, when there have been so-called movements in Pakistan, they've had the blessings of the army to really, take off. So I don't see that happening, because I think Prime Minister Imran Khan is still, in the good books of the military there. So I'm not really sure about the ability of the opposition to use this as a peg, and that therefore becoming a hindrance in striking a deal. But I think first the repercussions or implications of this judgment will have to be digested within Pakistan before we move on to any kind of next step, and that's why it's important that the death penalty stay continues.
That is one way that we have to see how Pakistan takes this forward. The other point, of course, and I'm going to come to Mr. Tilak on this. I know Sushant wants to come in, but Mr. Tilak, I want your view on this, is the ICJ's orders are not necessarily binding. There has been precedents where countries have just not followed. Considering Pakistan has fought this case legally and failed, but fought it nevertheless, do you think there's any chance of that happening, or they will take this on board and there won't be any kind of misadventure there?
You see, the judgments of the ICJ are binding. There has to be no of two opinions on that. They may not be enforced, like the cases of the United States where they did not enforce. So the judgment is binding. It's binding on both India and in Pakistan, and Pakistan will really have to go out of its way to say that they will not enforce, or they will refuse to give consular access anymore. I don't put it past Pakistan, but I'll be surprised if they do that in the face of the overwhelming 15-1 judgment on this particular issue. So, Pakistan is unlikely to not enforce it. But in case if it wants to, it can certainly do so. But I think the really sort of important point is that where does Pakistan go from here? You know, they can stall giving consular access for a while.
Absolutely.
You know, they can. There's no timetable laid down by when do they have to give consular access. They can stall. They can see which way the sort of wind is blowing. What are the international community doing? But India has to continue. In fact, let me also say this now, that since 2017, I think compliments are due to the Ministry of External Affairs for the kind of dedication and single-minded purposes with which they have pursued this case and kept the pressure on Pakistan to make sure that, you know, by asking for consular access, putting together a watertight case, getting a very good legal team, which India's case was argued. And so, in a similar manner, the MEA will have to continue putting pressure on Pakistan to ensure that consular access is actually given. And the modalities of the consular access too will have to be worked out, you know, in such a manner that the consular officers are able to meet Yadav by themselves, so they're able to talk freely and frankly and explain exactly what happened, and then get him a proper legal team.
No, since you spoke about India's outstanding efforts, I think we must make a mention here of Senior Counsel Harish Salve, who has spearheaded, you know, those legal efforts, and kudos to him and the way he's taken it forward. In fact, we will be hopefully hearing from him later, so do tune in to India Development Debate between 9 and 10. We'll have a lot more on the story for you. But Sushant, you wanted to come in on the point, and I also want you to add to the perspective that Mr. Tilak just took forward. Where does Pakistan go from here? Effectively, unfortunately and effectively, we've won this legal battle. It's been a diplomatic, moral victory, but the ball is in their court for the next steps. They're the ones who have to now give us consular access. They're the ones who have to review this judgment and take it to another court and figure out what to do.
So here is the thing, Tamanna. Number one, I think you spoke about precedents of people not observing the ICJ judgments. The countries which didn't observe are countries like the United States, and I don't think Pakistan is quite United States in terms of its power, in terms of its wealth, in terms of everything else, in terms of its influence, and in terms of its ability to cock a snook at the rest of the world. There is American exceptionalism, there is no Pakistani exceptionalism, much as they would like one. That is point number one. So, for the Pakistanis to now say that they don't accept this judgment, I don't think that's what's going to happen. I don't think they can afford it, not in the kind of hole they find themselves in. Secondly, they could do what the Pakistanis do best, which is that say, okay, fine, we've reviewed the judgment and all of that, and we don't think we stick to what the military courts had announced, and we'll carry out the sentence, which is why I keep saying that they cannot carry out this sentence, because now Jadhav's case is not just the case of any ordinary person. It's become a cause célèbre. And for the Pakistanis to now carry out this kind of a sentence, they will have to then factor in the kind of repercussions and far-reaching repercussions it will have on India-Pakistan relations.
Absolutely.
And frankly, any hope anybody harbors that the two countries might be getting back together and engaging at some level or the other, I think that's going to be shot down. So I don't think that's an option again available. They'll probably continue doing what they do best, which is carry out a bit of a propaganda war, but that's not going to go down very well, at least that's my estimate. And finally, on the issue of the Pakistani opposition, see, it's not a question that the Pakistani opposition is going to mount a movement against the government if it was to enter into some kind of a deal. In fact, if the deal is going to be worked out, the Pakistani opposition will have been told by the military, which will actually work out the deal, to pipe down on this issue. Yet, the Pakistani opposition will use this as a political handle to beat Imran Khan with. And that is going to be a price that Imran Khan will have to pay if some deal happens during his tenure. Now, we don't know how long Imran Khan is going to last, whether another 6 months, 1 year, the whole term, or maybe tomorrow he might be sacked. Because there is some talk, although it's satire, but that's Pakistani satire, that instead of Imran Khan giving Bajwa an extension, Bajwa is giving Imran Khan an extension.
No, frankly, the internal workings of Pakistani politics is not of concern today, and we'll have to wait and see. But it does possibly affect what happens next to Kulbhushan Jadhav. Huge moral victory, huge legal victory. diplomatic victory as well. Will it turn into the kind of potent victory when Mr. Jadhav actually walks back home and into India? That's the question. We thank all of you for joining us on this special edition of the India Development Debate. We're leaving you with some pictures of celebrations as well as this verdict is announced. And just a teaser here for you, we're going to have a larger, more extended coverage of this topic with fantastic panelists at 9 p.m. between 9 and 10. All the newsmakers there, do tune in.